This episode of Becoming a Bowhunter is brought to you by the Bowhunters Challenge. Go to bowhunterschallenge.com to become a better looking, better performing bowhunter. Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands. Searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bowhunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bowhunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bowhunting. Team, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Bowhunter. This episode is a little recap of my last hunt that I did. It was recorded in the car on my phone on the way home, so the audio is not that good, but the stories are freaking amazing. So I hope you can sit back, relax, and enjoy it, even if the quality is not as good as it usually is. Outside of that, I hope that you guys are getting out hunting. I hope that you're out shooting your bows. I hope that you are keeping away from the muck that is going on in Australia at the moment with the big old sea. And I hope that you guys are staying positive. If you guys are ever suffering mentally, feel free to reach out to myself or to one of your mates. I know that men in particular are the people that suffer the most when it comes to depression and suicide. And I think realistically it's something that is a bigger topic than what we're talking about right now, but I just want to let you know that I'm here for you. This podcast is here for you, as are your friends. Realistically, I just want you guys to have a good life. I want you guys to get out and enjoy the time that you have. So what a better way to do it than getting into bow hunting, getting into archery. I find it to be such a meditative sport and such a thing that it's more than a sport. It's something, it's a bit of a practice. And I've got a really cool episode coming up with Lonnie Brockman next week or in a fortnight's time that you guys will really enjoy, I think. And we touch on that a little bit more. But aside from that, I hope you're keeping well. Get yourself a bow if you haven't already got one. Head down to your local archery shop or, of course, to your local archery club and try out shooting if you haven't yet. Give yourself that joy in life. Team, what is up? I'm just on my way home from a hunt, which is why the audio does not sound great. It's just recording from my phone, so hopefully it is bearable for your ears. Went on a hunt this weekend, so it's 18th to the 20th of June. And for anyone who lives on the East Coast, you would have known how crazily windy it was. So I got there on Friday and the winds were just starting to pick up about lunchtime. And I'd pretty much I hadn't packed my pack or anything like that. Like sometimes before I go, I will get the chance to change my broadheads over. I'm on a bumpy road, that's why my voice is all shaky. Sometimes I'll get to pack my had my broadheads in, have my pack completely ready to roll. So literally as soon as I get there, I hit the ground running. This was not the case this time. I didn't get the chance to do that beforehand. So what I did was got there and spent the next hour just pretty much getting everything ready and unpacking the car and getting good to go, figuring out where all the cattle were, and then going down into the creek system. So as I got into the creek system, the winds were the opposite to what they usually were, which meant it was not good at all for being in the creek system. But it was that windy that it was kind of going to be windy everywhere that I went, unfortunately. So I just continued on. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to cruise down here. I'll try to get the winds at least somewhat in my favor. So if I come across a pig, I've got enough time to kind of draw back and take a shot. But I didn't have much. It was high hopes, I guess, is the best way to put it. So I was walking along for probably half an hour or so, and I bumped two little pigs out of this. They were just where they were sleeping, just out of their beds underneath the lantana bush. So it was literally, I actually got really close. I was probably only 2 meters from them when the wind got to them. So where they were, there was no way I was going to see them from the angle I was coming in from. But it kind of makes you really think twice about if you are going in the creek systems, or it not changed my perspective on it, but made me, it's a good reminder that when you're in the creek systems looking for pigs, like, you really need to be using your binoculars in those close quarters. Like, I'm talking in the 5 meter sort of range, looking under every single bush, every single tree stump and whatever else. And I mean, sometimes I think what happens with me is that I'll start off that way, and then I end up getting I don't know, frustrated or impatient maybe is the right word for it, and then end up kind of bailing out on that method and walking along more. And I mean, usually my method of walking through the creeks is just walking slowly and spotting them as they go, purely with eyesight because you're so close. And then if you need to, you get your binos up and have a look. And that usually works well for me. But yeah, in this circumstance where the pigs were literally right there, it meant that unfortunately I didn't get a shot on either of them. So they both got up and took off. Neither of them were really big pigs or anything. They were just small little guys. I feel like one was a boar, but I'm not definite. And I stayed in the creek. They ended up going up and into the paddock, and the paddock had grass that was at least knee height, kind of all the way through it. So I pretty much just thought, you know what, I'm going to let them be. Hopefully, and the way that the creek system works is pretty curvy, but it gets to this corner where I have to hop out of the creek because it's the neighbour's block then. So I hit the fence line, I have to hop out of the creek, stay on my paddock until I get around to another corner where the fence line drops back in, and that's where my paddock kind of rejoins into the creek, or where my block rejoins into the creek. So pretty much that was the circumstance. I got to that corner, and as I was getting to that corner, I was like, okay, that was reasonably close to where I got the pigs, or where I saw the pigs. I was like, I can jump up down the end here, I'll hop up in the paddock and be able to glass from them a bit more, see what's going on, or hopefully they've just jumped back in at the other corner or something like that. So I got up, and there was no way I was seeing anything unless they were like right on top of the hill glaring down at me, which is not the case. So because the grass was so long, it was just kind of a bit of a lost cause. But I just continued around to the other side there, and got back into the creek. And as I was walking along, it was quite bizarre. It's kind of on the complete opposite side. So it should have been really good winds by this time when I got to this side. But it was on the other side of a mountain, so it meant that it was going back the opposite. It was almost in reverse, which was super bizarre and pretty frustrating because it meant that I was walking down this creek once again with the winds in my back, pushing down this creek, which is a bit frustrating. But anywho, it's a story of my life, I think, with bow hunting, is the winds. So I got up, just kind of went through this creek system for as far as I could. This is kind of like doing a big U-turn around a big mountain by this stage, to explain it a little better. And got to the following fence line, which is the neighbours once again. And so I decided to kind of go up into the valley a bit more. And this is where I have seen some red deer before. And so I was kind of just cruising up in there, glassing over as I could. And the winds were kind of once again changing every direction, unfortunately. And so I can't remember if I think pretty much what happened is I'd gone up and I was trying to glass and see what I could see, and there was not much about that I could see. And so I started walking back down the hill to the fence line, and I was trying to and ah about what I should be doing. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to walk back over. It's kind of like, if you can imagine, this mountain is almost where the house. Where the house is located, there is a few mountain ranges kind of behind it, a few mountains behind it that all intertwine and interconnect. But within it, there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 valleys or so if you go completely the whole way around it. And so I was kind of dropping back down into this valley, or just about to. What my plan was to do was go back up and just kind of watch the creek that I'd originally started in, watch from afar to see if there were any pigs running along the top, because they typically will use that as a complete highway system. They live in the creek, but then they jump up on top of the creek along the fence line and just run to and fro, because it's obviously a lot quicker. And so that was my plan, to go back up there. So I started making my way down this hill, and I got to this fence line, and I was like, you know what, at first I was trying to use the winds, and I was like, stuff, I'm just going to like beeline straight to it. So I cut up this hill again after I'd come down it, but on a different angle. As I started walking, I found this sick shed antler. So it is a 5-point shed. It's really quite cool. I don't know if it's unique or not, but the antler, the beams kind of curve. It's almost like a C shape, which I think is super sick. And I don't know. I think that is more common of the red deer. I'd like to, if anyone knows what is more common, because there is also the guy that I've had, that I think I've had a bit of a relationship with for the last few years. the red deer, not human. The red deer has like straight beams, it seems, whereas this one has quite curved beams. And to be honest, I think most of the deer there have pretty curved beams to some extent. Although I have seen a mixture of all. So yeah, it's curved and it has 5 points. It's pretty, like, to be honest, there was a big fire that went through that hill in December, I think, maybe December, and so it might have even been January, I'm not sure, but it's like, I'm quite surprised that it actually is still there. So I was pretty stoked. It's not burnt, it just has sun-kissed on one side, it's still got its colour on the other side. So that was super sick. I found that, and that was kind of like afternoon made. I actually said to myself at that point, like, this is better than seeing deer. I don't know how I feel about that, if that is the truth or not, but in that moment I was just so stoked, because I've been going to this block for probably 3 years, maybe a little bit longer now, and this is the first proper shed that I found. Like, I found a whole dead skull, which is sick. Like, if you've ever seen the pictures on my Instagram page of that, like, it's a complete dead skull with its antlers intact, and it's fully sun-kissed. So I found that, and then one other time when I was there in the creek, I found like a hollowed out antler. It was just a little fork, I think it is, and yeah, it was hollowed out and broken. So it was cool to actually find like a full intact shed that was, yeah, somewhat still alive. So I'm pretty pumped about that. So anyway, I went to bed eventually that night. Got to sleep pretty early. It's pre-rec from a big week. And woke up Saturday morning absolutely pumped. But even in the night, Saturday night, you could hear the wind. It was absolutely howling. And so I knew it was going to be hard, but I wasn't sure what to kind of think of it. Because usually if wind is going hard in one direction, it's awesome, because it means that you can cover a lot of ground really quickly. You can have the wind in your face, and hopefully that works to full advantage. I got out there hoping that this was the case. However, typical of my block, it definitely was not, but typical of this type of wind that was about, it was just, yeah, it was mush. It was forward and backwards consistently, not consistently. So it would be going one direction for ages, and then all of a sudden it would just chop and change and go back the other direction. If you're ever in any sort of corner or any sort of mountain ridge, it would just swirl like crazy. And so the other thing I forgot to say is that it is completely dry out here. Like, it is crazy how dry it is out here. They've still got grass about, but it's all yellow and brown, which is kind of upsetting. Like, I guess they're definitely in a form of a drought right now. Any rain that they kind of got over the summer was all just like a little bit of grass rain that wasn't going where they needed it to go. So the dams are getting low. Everything is looking pretty dull. And so I got out there, and that was kind of, I went out, let me explain. I went out and had the intention of going and sitting in the fields, because that's where the boys tend to be at this time of year. Then when I got there, I realized that probably sitting by a water source was going to be the more favorable option because of how dry it was. But when I got there and realized that the winds were just so choppy, it meant that I couldn't really sit down anywhere quite easily and see the water without blowing around the water completely. So it kind of meant that I had to go back to just trying to spot and stalk, like find the deer. So I got out and about, and because it was so windy, it was obviously not that pleasant to even be out. And so I kind of wanted to find the places that didn't have much wind about and see what I could see. And the first real shelf that I kind of got to, or ridge, mountain line, I guess, that I got to that would have been blocking, there was a little spiker or a forky there. I'm pretty sure it was a forky, just couldn't quite see it properly because of the way the sun was. It was kind of located and making him shiny, and couldn't quite see, but I'm pretty certain I saw a pair of forks. And so he was kind of in a location where my wind was blowing directly over the top of him, but as soon as you got onto the face of the mountain, the wind was blowing back towards my face, like the face of the mountain that he was on. So I kind of decided that I'd just take a pretty gutsy trek straight towards him and see what would happen. And so I was definitely stealth mode and creeping only when the wind would go, and the wind was in my face for most of the time. It would swirl every once in a while, but there was 1,000 ground birds. So for anyone who's hunted with quails, they've seen what quails are like. They wait until you've pretty much stood on them, and then they just and take off right in front of you, and it scares the shit out of you every time. Like I don't know, I got so much adrenaline just from quails this weekend, just from almost stepping on them. So like literally, I think just in that mountain, like just on that little ridge, as I was walking over to this deer, I think I got like 4 or 5 batches of these quails, different batches every time, and 2 pheasants. So the little pheasants, like I don't know what they are, some sort of brown pheasant, I guess is the best way to say it. I think they're a ground pheasant maybe, but they hop up and they fly like to the closest tree essentially, and then they rest there. Like they don't have much ability to fly for long distances, I'm pretty sure. Beautiful bird, and I think they're quite dumb because they're often on the side of the road from flying out in front of cars. I don't know if it's dumb or if they're slow or what, but yeah, mixture of all of the above. I got to where he was, or where I was pretty sure he was, and there was no deer there. So I'd spent probably a good 45 minutes stalking in on that deer, and I knew as soon as I'd started my stalk that I was not going to have sight of him. So I was purely doing it based on noise, if I heard him run off, or if I saw him at any point, which I did not. So I got to right where he was, hoping he should be there or somewhere within that vicinity, and he was not at all. Which is, I don't know, I kind of expected it, to be honest, based on the attempt of this stalk that I was going for. So I ended up going and kind of trekking all over the block from there. So I went back over to the mountainside because it was so dry. I decided to go down to this little creek bed. It's the creek where I actually got my first hind, and so I went back there, and it was like this little green winter haven. Yeah, I guess it's a good place for it, but a little wonderland. It was like super green. There were still little patches of water throughout it. When I first got there was like this big smell. Big meaning it was kind of foul, but kind of not. It smelled a lot like a pig, and so I was kind of keeping eyes out for a pig. But I did not come across him at all, unfortunately. And so I kind of just moseyed my way around there for quite a while, but because it was so lush, I was sure there was going to be some animals there. So I slowed right down, and unfortunately, there was no animals there. So I kind of spent a fair bit of time there, and it was getting windier and windier. The more time I was out, the windier it was getting. So I think it was between 25 and 30 kilometers per hour, I think. But it was kind of stop-start. It would go, it would stop, it would go, it would stop. And so then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go over to the far corner, the opposite corner of where I was pretty much, because that's where the deer usually hang out. I'm like, it's windy enough that they should be kind of just in there, hopefully hanging along the bottom of the ridgeline. I'm like, I'll deal with the wind when I get there. And so I got there, it's probably 10:30 at this point, maybe 10 o'clock, and started walking my way in, and the winds were horrible. Like, you literally couldn't... I don't know. No matter which way I went, the winds were there and blowing the way that they shouldn't have been blowing. So, obviously because of the hills, like, and it's almost like a bit of a complete U shape. If you can imagine flat ground or flattish ground in the middle being a U, and then all around it being ridges. So as soon as you start to walk closer to one edge, there would be heavy winds coming off of that wall, bouncing back to you. And the whole thing was just like a bit of a cyclone pit or something, I guess is the best way to put it. So the winds were just everywhere. So I actually didn't even bother. I was like, you know what, fuck this, I'm getting out. So that was, by that time it was probably 11:30, something like that anyway, which is a lot later than I usually go out chasing the reds anyway, because they typically bed up pretty quickly. But because it was cooler, with the winds being about, I was like, you know what, may as well keep going. Oh, a bit tired. Yeah, may as well keep going. So that's why I stayed out for so long. So I ended up making my way home, had some breakfast, and then my auntie, who's a farmer, was like, hey, can you help me with some stuff this afternoon? So we got into it, and ended up being, I don't know, a good few hours of work. I'd say probably a good 2.5, maybe 3 hours. And by the time, because I got home, I ate some lunch and we kind of hung out for a bit and had a cuppa. And then by the time we actually went out, we did a fair few jobs around the house, and then we went up to the back paddocks. And we decided that we were going to take the rifle up with us just in case we saw anything. And so took it with us. The whole goal for me this weekend was really to come home with meat. And so because they'll often offer me the gun and say, do you want to take the gun out when the weekend's not going successful, or when I've been super, super, super close, they'll say, do you want to take the gun out? And usually I'm just say, no, not at all. Because the goal has always been just to get animals down with the bow. Whereas this weekend I came out with the intention to actually get meat. So I was like, if they do offer it, I'm going to take up the opportunity. And so she said, should we take the gun out the back as we go? And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. So we went out and we did all our jobs, dropped off some hay to some cattle, went and checked some dams, just to see in some of the paddocks they don't check that much, to see how much water they actually have access to. And just did a bit of a trek around. And so by the time we actually got back to the house, which would be the time that I'd go out hunting, it was like 4:15. Now winter solstice is tomorrow, being Monday, and this is on Saturday. So 4:15 meant that I had about 45 minutes of light left before it was going to be completely dark, or too dark to hunt. So we got back, and I said, do you mind if I take the gun up the back hill where I was pretty much the day before? I'm like, do you mind if I take the gun up the back hill there? And my auntie was like, no, not at all. So I grabbed the gun, I quickly chucked on a camo top. I already had just some green pants on. And I pretty much got out after I trekked up the hill, grabbed my pack and just got trekking pretty fast. And I just had the feeling, I'm like, I'm going to see deer. I know it's happening today. And so I trekked up, and literally I got over one ridge, and it's pretty dense and thick in there. And I was kind of making my way. I was like, I need to go 2 or 3 ridges before I'll be in the space where I've seen the reds kind of a fair few times. I got one ridge over and bumped a mob of 6 hinds. And so they kind of took off quite fast because I was stomping my way through. I was not being careful at all as I was walking over. And they kind of ran off. They were scared, but not too scared. They hadn't winded me or anything. They just heard me and kind of ran off. And so I realized, I was like, look, yes, you've only got a certain amount of light left now, but you need to slow down. It's like you've essentially learned for a long time how to be a bow hunter. Just because you've got a gun, it doesn't change anything. You still need to sneak in on the animals. You still need to calm down. So I started acting more like I usually do, and walking quite slowly or quite quietly, and making my way across. Because they were going around the mountain, the way that they took off was kind of around and going to woods where I usually see them. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go up a bit higher and trek my way around. So I made my way up as I kept getting around the face, and I was kind of looking down the hill, and I knew I was going to come into them somewhere soon. And so I was taking a few quiet, just chill steps, and all of a sudden I see a flick of an ear. And you wouldn't believe it, or you are going to believe it, but it was 30 meters away. So complete bow range. I knew, like, when I picked up the gun, I knew this was going to happen. I'm like, you know what? The day that I get a deer with the gun is going to be the day that I should have had my bow with me. And sure enough, this was the day. So she was sitting 30 metres away. The gun I took out was a 30-06. And so it's got quite a fair distance. So I've lined her up. I've kind of leant up against the tree and taken the shot. And it shot directly over the top of her. She is not budged. She just literally stood still. The bang obviously just kind of stunned her or something. So she was just like, what the fuck's going on? Like, she just literally stood still. She didn't look around or anything. I didn't have earplugs in, and that gun is loud. Like, I was ringing like straight away. I'm like, fuck. So I quickly reloaded and took my next shot. Now I'm like, okay, you need to aim low this time. Like, if I was aiming on her vitals and took the shot, it pretty much and missed her completely. And I don't know if I had a little bit of the old TP going on or something as well, because being a gun, obviously any small movement becomes a large movement. But anyway, I aimed low and took my shot, and it was somewhat good, but she actually ran probably like 80 metres or so. So I just put another one in the chamber and quickly just took that last shot to kind of finish her off. And when I went over, so I gave her some time and trekked over there, and as I was trekking over, the other hinds that she was with were literally just there. They were just hanging about where she was. And I didn't see them to start with. I was just walking over, and they saw me. And then they kind of just started to make their way up the hill. Being that I was there for meat, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a second hind. Like, I may as well, while I've got the chance with the gun. So I had 4 bullets in the barrel, and this was the last one. So I cocked the gun and took my shot. And as I took the shot, it clicked and didn't take the shot. I was like, what the fuck happened? And I reopened my bolt, and it just hadn't actually loaded the bullet. So I loaded it back up and still had a chance. So I took a shot, and I think I definitely pulled, like, I punched that trigger hard, I'm pretty sure. The adrenaline was starting to kick in, and I shot over the top of them. So I'm glad that it didn't do any damage at all. It was just literally like, okay, the deer got away. Let me get started on the deer. So by this stage, I think I had all of 10 minutes of light left by the time I got to her. So I got to her and I did a little thank you. Kind of spent some time just with her, just letting her pass and be. And then thanked her for her life, thanked her for her food, the food that she was going to provide my family, and then pretty much got to work on butchering her up. And so to start with, I wasn't really sure how to go about it. I'm like, do I just drag her down? But where I was a good couple hundred meters from the fence line. And to drag her down to the fence line still wouldn't actually get me anywhere close to where I would be able to get a car to. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to pretty much take the front and back legs and the back straps. I'll just take them off here, and I'll just take that and go. Where the shot exited was out of her neck on the second shot, and so it came like she was cornering away when I shot, and so pumped through her lung and punched out the neck, which meant that I couldn't really get much of the neck meat off anyway. So as much as I do love neck meat, I think neck roasts are one of the best parts of a deer. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to not take that part, because it would have been minimal, the amount that I could actually take. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to get to work. So I started skinning her, and I decided to take the skin off completely on the one leg. I was going to start at the back end, peel the skin off of one side completely, take off both the legs, put it in my meat bags, and then get going from there. And so I started this process and got the back leg off completely and put it in the bag, and then I realized that I actually only had 2 bags with me, 2 meat bags, so it was going to be a bit problematic because they couldn't all fit in there. And so I knew that I was going to be walking the legs through the bush, potentially out of my pack and on me somewhere, or having to do like I don't know, potential like relays of meat. So running some, leaving some, running some, leaving some. I wasn't really sure how I was going to approach it. So I pretty much chopped off that leg, put it in the bag, and then decided that I'd just take the next leg with the fur on. So did that, then I knocked off the skin while I did, so I could do the back straps on that side. So did that completely, put the back straps in the other bag. And it was pretty messy. Like, I was trying to be quick, and like literally by the time I got into the second leg, it was pitch black. I had both my torches on. I had a headlamp on. I actually didn't have my second torch on. I turned that on later. So yeah, I had my headlamp on, just going through what I was doing. And just before I went away, actually, I sharpened my knives, and I've been trying to chasing a system to figure out what's best for sharpening knives, and I've been using a workshop, I think it is. I think that's what it's called, and it's pretty much like the electric sander style. Dead fox on the road, but yeah, pretty much like the electric sander style, like the triangle sander blade or band that you sit and you just kind of pull your knife through. And so I did that. And pretty much all my knives didn't come out sharp enough. Like, none of them were punching hairs. None of them were that great. So I kind of watched a few videos online just to figure out what would be the best version to follow through with next. And I had a stone at home, and I watched a video that was pretty good. The dude's like, look, if you're not using your stone, you're being dumb, pretty much, which is what I need to hear. So I got my stone out, I soaked it for 10 minutes, and then I just got to work. He taught a good method as to how to do it properly, and so I got sharpening on all my knives. And at first I didn't think they were super sharp, but they're sick. They're going so well. The other thing that I got this last week was an F-Dick smooth steel, because my steel that I was using before was ribbed, and this is like completely smooth. And my knife that I sharpened, so I sharpened I think 5 or 6 of my knives. I think I've got 7. But yeah, I sharpened probably 5 or 6 of them. Actually, I sharpened all of them apart from one, so 6 of them. And I only used one this weekend because I didn't have to change. I didn't have to use any of the others. This one was just so sharp still because of the F-Dick, the steel, as well as what I'd done with the stone. So I was so pumped. But yeah, so I can't even remember where I got up to. Pretty much I was skinning back and get the back straps off of this one side. And by this time it's black, like completely black. So I've got my F-Dick with me, just quickly giving it a few knockovers. Pretty much the way that I saw a guy doing it the other day, this butcher doing it the other day, is he'll work on one part of a beast, and then he will sharpen, and then he'll work on his next part, and then he'll sharpen on his steel. So that was pretty much what I went with. I chopped off one leg, sharpen it up. Chopped off the next leg, sharpen it up. Got off the back strap, sharpen it up. And it was just punching everything off really, really easily. That's what I was getting at. But because it was so sharp, it was knocking off so many hairs, and she had this big, thick winter coat on that it was so hard to not get freaking fur everywhere. Like there was fur stuck to all of her meat, unfortunately. So yeah, that was pretty much knocking that first half off. And so the front leg, I decided to keep obviously the fur on. So I just laid it down in the shrub or in the bush with fur down, meat side facing up. So I flipped her over and got started on the next side. And had decided obviously to keep just the fur on. So got the back leg off first, got the front leg off, and then of course there was nothing holding her in place. So she was able to tumble. Luckily she didn't, because I'd kind of positioned her head. And so as I started trying to chop the back straps though, she definitely started to move quite a lot, which was quite frustrating. So I had to kind of reposition myself so I had legs on either side trying to chop this back strap off, and it was interesting to say the least, I think. So yeah, pretty much working on this and got that last back strap off, and it's getting cold by this time too. The winds were on the other side of the mountain. It was pretty chill on that side of the mountain. That was something I forgot to say. The winds were hectic on the other side of the mountain. On this side of the mountain, they were calm in the afternoon, which was bizarre because it was so hectic everywhere else that you went on this property. Which makes it even more funny, I guess, that I was within bow range on a day that was so windy and I was not going to get winded whatsoever. Yeah, hilarious. Anyway, so I got this back strap off and I put the other, so both the back straps in one meat bag. I had the back leg on the other meat bag. The back leg being the one that had no skin on. And I was packing up and I realised that to have any chance of carrying the meat home, I need to put one of the other legs into the pack as well. So what I did was I put one of the front legs with fur on still through the into the bag, the meat bag that had the back leg. And so I loaded that up in the pack, and while I was loading up, I heard noise like it's literally sounded like someone walking towards me, but like taking a few steps and then stopping, and then taking a few steps and then stopping, and it just kept getting closer and closer and closer. And so this is when I actually pulled my other torch out of my pack. So I'd moved all my stuff from the main section of my pack to all of the smaller pockets so I could carry the meat in the main section. So I ran back and was quickly just pulling my torch out. And I was shining it, just trying to figure out where this noise is coming from and what it was. Because it literally just sounded like there's a person standing right there walking towards me. And so I'm shining it. I'm like, there's got to be something. Like, I'm going to see something moving about for sure. And I couldn't ever actually see what it was. I could see the grass moving. I actually even yelled out at one point. I was like, hello? Because I was like so sure that it was footsteps. I thought it might have been maybe my auntie coming to help me. And then, of course, in that situation, your mind starts to wander a little bit. But yeah, I was like, what the fuck's going on? So I yelled out, and it just kept walking towards me. And I saw it eventually. It was walking just straight down the hill, whatever it was. I actually think it was like a goanna. I have seen them, not heaps there, but rarely. And I kind of thought that of all things like that I could yell at, it would be probably something that might stick around. I'm not sure. Everything else that would be there. Sorry about all the yawns, I'm wrecked. Would be running away at my voice. But it just kept kind of cruising down towards me, and then eventually it turned off and went down the hill a bit more, which I thought was super funny. So the way that I did it is I knocked the hocks off of the leg that I'd skinned and the other leg that was in the pack. So it meant that the other two legs, I actually still had the hooves on, still had the legs on intact. So what I did is I put my pack on, and then I put the legs over my shoulders where the knee bend was. It was sitting on my shoulder. And then I picked up the rifle. So I was holding both of those legs in one hand and under my chin, essentially. So I was holding, so this is one back leg, one front leg. I was holding the back leg, the front leg over the top of the back leg. And then that was kind of all out in front of me. And then I think my arm or my chin, no, it was actually, I lie. It was the leg of the deer was tucked right up into my chin. So my chin's supporting it, my hand's supporting it, and then I had to literally like squat directly down. I can't lean forward or backwards because it would lose the meat off of me. So I had to like squat directly down to pick up the rifle. It was pretty funny actually. Like my pack is literally just a Reebok bag, and it's sick. Like it does the job. It's super good, but I definitely know why people go after a good, decent pack when it comes to packing meat out, because it was ridiculously hard to fit kind of too much in there. I mean, a front leg, a back leg, and two back straps is pretty decent, as well as it had my camelback and stuff in there. But yeah, I was for sure. I thought it was going to unzip while I was walking. I was not definite that it was not going to, and that was a bit nerve-wracking, especially if I'd kind of been on a bit of a hill, a bit of a slant, and then all of a sudden just lost the meat out the back. It'd be very frustrating. So I just had to risk it. So I had my setup with my legs on my shoulders, the bag full of meat, and the rifle in my hands, and I tucked. Because my freaking head torch had started shutting on and off and flickering a fair bit, so I had to chuck my other torch up into my head as well. And so I kind of had it through the straps of the head torch facing forward. And so I started walking from there. And I think the walk probably would have been about, I don't know, maybe 2K, thereabouts, I'm not sure. And of course, all through like pretty hilly country, pretty tall, pretty steep stuff. So I kind of got after it. Once I picked it up, I was like, you do not want to put this down. Like, as soon as you put it down, you're going to want to rest longer than what you need to. Just go. So I started trekking, and because it's kind of loose ground, just every once in a while, you'd get like a slip. And so you'd stand on a rock, or you'd stand on a branch or something, and it's just like a dynamic drop where you get a bit of a thud. And tell you what, my knees are pretty sore today after doing that. Like, I squat a lot. I do a lot of exercises on my legs, so they're ready for the shit, but they're still pretty stiff after this weekend. I think it's purely just because of that dynamic drops that I wasn't sure were coming, because it was in complete darkness pretty much. So my goal was just kind of to keep to the top of the mountain, make my way as far around the edge as I could, and then kind of just mosey straight back to the house. And so I did that, which meant that I had to actually walk uphill first. So trekking up the hill, it's pretty steep stuff, pretty tiring work, but just huffing and puffing, and I'm like, don't drop it. Don't you fucking drop it. And pretty much as I was walking, because of those dynamic drops essentially that are happening, like the thuds, eventually the damn torch fell out of my headpiece that I had put it into. So I had to lean over and get my torch without trying to drop the legs. I did have to put down the rifle to make this happen, so I was leaning down, and I managed to do it. I managed to pick I need to get a coffee. It's ridiculous. Managed to put the torch back into the little headpiece, and I wrapped it around twice so it wouldn't fall back out. And then I picked the rifle back up, and then I kept trekking. I kind of know this part of the block, like, not that well, I guess is the best way to say it. For a long time, I always found reds on the other end, and never really thought to venture to this part at all. And I'd say only within the last year I've been going to this part quite a lot, because they're there a fair bit. And so I actually, like, up until a year ago, didn't even know that it was part of their block. I thought it was the neighbours. So yeah, I don't really know the block that well. I know it's well enough, but in the complete darkness, I was kind of umming and ahhing as to what I was doing. Like, I knew the general direction, so I'm cruising around going to there. But like, there's a few valleys and drops and bits and pieces that could lead you into the wrong space. And so I got to myself into this part where it was thick, and I knew that if I kept going that way, I was going to end up in the bottom of the valley, which is not where I wanted to be. So I kind of shuffled across, was going to drink some water. Shuffled across for ages, and end up having to drop down. So I was losing my elevation pretty quickly, and I thought I was going in the right direction. And then I got to this other really thick part, and I was like, no, you fucked up here. Like, going into that thick stuff is a nightmare, especially while I was carrying, like, I was pretty wide by this point, carrying the meat around and stuff. And so I moseyed my way kind of around it once again, and realised that I'd almost gone too far around. I needed to kind of trek back up. And I could see the ridgeline, I could see the outline of the ridgeline, so I kind of trekked back up there. And as I was walking back up, or as I was walking around, I ran into a fence line, and that, like, threw me completely, because I was like, hold up, this fence line shouldn't be here. And it turns out I'd just gone so far around at the top that I'd put myself further ahead than I thought I had. So I hit this fence line and walked up the fence line. I knew that whenever I got to the fence, it was going to be the first time I had to put the meat down. But I got to the fence, and it was not the case, because the fence had been kind of like knocked over. So I just stood over the fence and kept walking, which is awesome. So as I walked up to the top of this hill, then I realized I was pretty much looking directly over the house. So all I had to do was get down this big hill, go through a few gates, and then I would be back. And as I started walking down the hill, bless my auntie, she'd gone out to try find me, because it was so dark by the stage. It was 6, probably would have been, this was 20 to 7, I think, when she came to get me. And she was just a bit worried. She's like, I knew I had to come looking for you, just because I didn't have a two-way or anything like that. So I couldn't tell her that there was a deer down. I honestly thought she would have heard the gunshots because there was 4 of them as a first piece. Secondly, I was literally just on the other side of this mountain, and she said that she thought she heard one, but that was it, which I thought was pretty interesting. Anyway, so yeah, she'd come out to get me, so I was shining my torch down her direction so she'd see me, and she did all the heavy lifting of the gates for me, which meant that by the time she got to me, I didn't have to unload until I unloaded onto the ute. So I unloaded directly onto the ute. Geez, it was heavy. By the time you got to that point and I'd taken everything off, it was just like such a relief. Oh no, I just realized I left the damn bones there. Bugger. Big bugger. Fuck. I got a heap of bones for my dog, and I left them there from this venison. Shit balls. Anyway, so that's really disappointing. Anyway, so my auntie was there. She helped me unload, and we pretty much just put it all straight into the fridge that they've got going down the shed, just to let it sit overnight. I went in and had some dinner and got after it. And then this morning I went back out. I was like, you know what? I've got the chance to go back out bow hunting one more time. May as well. So I got out and I made my way back over there because the winds were meant to be just as bad today. And so I took off and got over to the other side there. And I was close enough to where the hind was, like the carcass. And I was like, I'm just going to see if anything has been on it, on the carcass. So I walked over. And as I got over there, I was taking it reasonably slow, but probably not as slow as what I would have had I known what was there. I got there, and sure enough, there were 2 red deer standing off of it. So literally 5 meters away from her, there was a spiker and a hind standing there. And so once again, in bow range, they would have been, I think, 35 meters is what I checked it out to be after when they left. I'm just going to Macca's so I can order myself coffee. So yeah, pretty much. I don't know if I can stop and restart this, so you guys are going to have to listen to me as I order a coffee at Macca's. But pretty much they had seen me, they knew I was there, they hadn't smelt me, and so they just kind of made their way around. All right, be quiet for a little bit, you lot. I'm just going to do a coffee order. Hey, can I please just get a large ice long black, please?
Not a problem. Anything else?
No, that's it, thanks.
Driving, facing.
You. And so they saw me and they just kind of took off around the hill. And so my plan was to get down, confirm order here. Wait up. Hey, yeah, thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Just go to the... Anyway. And my plan was to always go back down to the creek, so go and walk the creek in the opposite to what I'd done previously. To the previous story that I told you just this morning. The first day. And so I was like, you know what, they're probably going to be down there when I get down to them because they were kind of going that direction. And so I started trekking down that way, and as I got down to the creek, the winds were not in my favour at all. They were pretty much blowing directly in my back down into this creek system. And so once I got into the creek system, it'd be all right, but I had to get down into it first before I'd kind of have any good positions. And so I was walking slowly, but not super slow, as I trekked my way down, and was kind of being a little less cautious than I should have been. Like, I slowed right down once I got there, because I knew if there was something there, I was hoping there was something there because there's a bit of water just at that edge. And so there's a fair bit of like bush cover and whatever else as you walk down. Thank you. Cheers, mate. Yeah, fair bit of bush cover like from the direction I was going, which meant that they wouldn't have seen me if there was anything there. I wouldn't have seen it, but they potentially could have winded me on my way down. So I was just kind of moseying down, started to slow down when I got there. Back on the road again. My brain's working again now that I'm out of the drive-through. Anyway, I was walking down and I literally popped my head around the corner and there's a freaking hind there. I'm like, fuck off. So I actually already had a arrow on because I've always... it was actually when I went hunting with James Doomstis. He was like, dude, whenever you approach a water source, you should always have your arrow knocked and ready just in case, because it's the place where they're going to hang out the most. So why not have it there? Oh, please don't be any light cameras there. Fuck yeah, safe. And so, yeah, I had my arrow loaded and ready to roll, and I got down there. I'm like, oh, fuck. And so literally kind of like popped my head up directly where she was about to look and ducked back behind so I could drew back, and then the winds blew. And she, of course, tucked off up the hill a bit, and there was 5 of them there. And so one of them, it moved a little bit, but it didn't really move that much because she wasn't as bothered because it wasn't her that had smelt it. Obviously, the other one had kind of taken off and then stopped again, so it wasn't sure what was going on. I drew back and I had her, and I held her at 40. Like, I'm like, that's 40 meters for sure. I held her there. And I held it for probably like, I don't know, 2 to 5 seconds or so, and I hesitated. Part of me was like, she's too aware and it's too far. Like, I probably would have happily taken it if it was 20 meters, 30 meters, but it was just like that little bit further than I wanted to. Like, if she was unaware, I would have probably happily taken it. If she was closer and aware, I probably would have happily taken it, but I hesitated with the distance and with the setup that it was. And in hindsight, you know what? I reckon I probably could have taken that shot and been very successful. It was like perfect broadside. I was holding on her vitals. Like, I don't think there would have been anything wrong with the shot. But because she was aware, I kind of hesitated and she took off. And to be honest, I actually felt I feel completely okay with that decision. Like, hindsight, yeah, maybe it would have been great to take, but I didn't take it, and I own that decision. I'm pretty stoked that I didn't take it, just in case something did happen, right? Something bad did happen. I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that, and that she didn't have to go through that. I arranged it all afterwards to figure out how far it actually was, and it was 38 meters. It was, so yeah, getting pretty good with this guessing game. I'll often do it when I get out into the bush, actually. I just kind of, as I'm walking, I wonder how far that is. I reckon that's 30 meters, and then get my rangefinder out and check it. But yeah, so they made their way off, and I was like, okay, well, it's pig time. So got back into the creeks and started walking the creeks, and there were no pigs to be seen. So spent the morning, once I got home, I had some breakfast, and then spent the morning butchering up. And as you just learnt, left my damn bones there for my dog, which is frustrating. I'll have to message my auntie and let her know so she can freeze them or give them to her dogs. So that was it. I was stoked. Like, I mean, really, the goal, like I said, was to go out and get some meat, and I achieved that. Sure, it's sucky it wasn't with the bow, but at the same time, I got my first rifle kill. Hey, I'm pretty stoked with that. First deer rifle kill, I should say. But it definitely doesn't change me. I don't want to become a rifle hunter now, don't worry. The hardmanship of bow hunting is too appealing, which is bizarre, but it's like when you overcome it, when you do a successful hunt, the reward outweighs being a rifle hunter and getting meat every weekend. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a bow hunter through and through, and I always will be. I'm sure of it. I actually was thinking about this the other day, and I think it's literally going to be a lifelong thing now. I think most bow hunters can agree with that. That once you kind of get the itch for it, and once you froth on it as hard as what I have and others have. Oh, Jesus! Almost hit something on the road. Yeah. Once you've got the bug, you got the bug, man. You got the urge, dog. So yeah, that is the weekend gone. I think it was good fun, but not really a bow hunting weekend as such, although I spent a lot of hours bow hunting. Lugging my bow, I should say, but I'm stoked. You know what? Just to get out is always awesome. having weekends away where you get to go out and be in nature is just sick, and I needed it this week. It's been a big few weeks on my end. Had some big work contracts that we've been filling at the moment, as well as landing a fair few new jobs, which has been awesome, but it's also been quite taxing. And so, yeah, I was stoked to be getting away, and it's the thing that really fills my cup back up. Like, I walked out in the bush in my camo with my bow and just felt relieved, just felt like instantly good, which is awesome. So, yeah, I'm stoked. If you've never tried bow hunting, you're thinking of getting into it, and that's why you're listening to this podcast, I can't recommend it enough. I really think it is just incredible for the soul, incredible for the mind, incredible for the people that you meet. With that being said, I think that's a good place to wrap. Thanks heaps for listening along, team, and I hope you are getting out hunting. I hope you're having a good winter. It's been nice and fresh so far, so hopefully that's dealt you some longer days with animals out in the sun. Much love, crew. See you.
That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bowhunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you're enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.